You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
To the chasers of light, to the purveyors of pictures, to everyone listening around the world, you're listening to the F11 Photography Podcast. So we are going to cover a really cool subject, a subject that I love to talk about in today's interview, which is street photography. I talk about portraiture a lot on this show because that's what I mainly do, especially for money. But when I shoot for myself, I prefer to shoot street photography. And today we're going to discuss why, but rather than listen to me do it, we're going to talk to our guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Jason Berkman. I had to play the sound effect twice, so there you go. Maybe I'll come up with a different clap. But welcome in, man. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. Now, we got to get something out of the way. Okay, so let me do this, and here we go.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Yes, that is right. It is Jason's birthday today.
That'll wake you up.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So we had to wish you a happy birthday.
I appreciate it.
Yes, and rather than going out and celebrating his birthday, he's hanging out with a couple of losers in about a 15 by 4 foot room.
It's a small room.
It's TMI. It's really, that's what it is. It's TMI. Yeah.
I can hear your stomach. I can hear your stomach gurgle. But anyway,
it doesn't smell terrible yet. So
yeah,
we're good.
We'll get there eventually. All right. So I pretty much start off every interview with the same first question, which is, tell me your story. How did you get here? How did you get to photography in your life?
Oh, boy. Well, I started taking pictures when I was 19. About 18, 19. I bought a K1000, an Asahi K1000 Pentax, and that was my first camera, and I loved it. I loved 3200 film, 3200 black and white was my go-to because I loved grain. I loved the black and white grain, which is funny because I don't really use grain these days. But back in the day, that was just my thing. I really loved wide angle. I would use like fisheye and all this crazy stuff, and took a lot of pictures of like I was in bands. This was in the 90s, so I know I'm dating myself.
I'm the same way, dude. I come from the world of music. It all came from bands. Yeah. He comes from the world of music, so we're all joined together by the same thing. But go on.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I was playing in bands, and I'm a guitar player and songwriter and stuff, and so I was in bands, and I just found the love of photography, and then I decided to take a course in black and white photography at the community college over at it's Pierce Community College in Woodland Hills or West Hills, California. So started doing darkroom, and I fell in love with darkroom. But I love the process today a lot more than back then because you spend like 2-3 hours on like one photo and like probably $50 worth of paper just to get that one photo the correct way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's something to be said for dodging and burning with your hand. Like, there's a reason why there's a lot of people who probably use Photoshop and abuse Photoshop their whole life and don't know why the dodge and burn icons are what they are.
Yeah.
It's like, why is there a hand there? Because that's literally how you did it.
Yeah. You just like this, or use paper or whatever you can to kind of,
For the people who don't know the original process, obviously not me, could you just explain a little bit of the dodge and burn process?
Gosh.
Go ahead, guest.
So we use a thing called an enlarger, and basically you have your sensitive paper or whatever your image is. You put your image or your what do you call it?
Talking about the slide?
Your negative, yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the negative that you
negative.
put, inside the slide. Gotcha.
I have to bring myself back there because I have not used film in a long time. So you put your negative into the enlarger, and then it basically light comes down on the sensitive paper, and then you dodge how much light goes on, right? Or you burn. Or dodge or burn. So dodge is darken, burn is lighten. So the amount of light that you let in is am I right?
I think you got that one backwards, but I know what you meant.
Backwards.
So basically you would, so like if you're in Photoshop or you're in Capture One or Lightroom and you want to draw a mask just on someone's face and you want to lighten it up, you would instead cover the entire print and just let light hit that person's face or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or not hit that face, depending on what you wanted to do. And that's how you would dodge and burn. And that's why they would show pictures of a hand, or, that's how they'd show a magnifying glass to let more light hit it.
Yeah.
Oh, see, yeah, I watched a documentary about like Ansel Adams and how he was just like a master at dodging and burning, and I couldn't like imagine in my head like what does it even look like?
Yeah, it's just like there's a light in the studio right now, and if I put it over your face, if that light kept exposing a piece of paper more and more, I would expose it less by putting it in front of there for a few seconds. It's kind of like if you've ever painted with light. Sometimes you just put light up for a second. You do a really long exposure and you just take a flashlight and do a quick flash to just hit your foreground subject while you're trying to get like the Milky Way in the background or something. It's the same thing, but you're doing it with light hitting paper that's sensitive to light.
Yeah. And you could use I would use cardboard and put cardboard in front of it for a while, or use your hand, go like this and take your hand out. Yeah.
Well, it's why it's complete bullshit. You hear some of these old people, these old school guys go, I'm a purist, all this Photoshop stuff and blah, blah. It's like, who would probably be a Photoshop master is Ansel fucking Adams. Because he was doing it, but he didn't have it. He was just like, I'm gonna make this because there's imperfections when you're taking pictures on film. The sky for whatever reason didn't expose as well as the foreground based on how I saw it with my eyes because of a bunch of small variables that happen. So what Ansel Adams would do, he's like, well, I want it to look different. So I'm going to do something different to the sky, or I'm going to do something different to the foreground by putting my hand in front of it or not. Right. Because the art of taking a picture and the art of developing the picture was just as important as, the back end when you were actually making the print. The whole idea of making the print. Because now it's like we don't make prints anymore per se. We will edit something and send it off to a print house, and then we might have a conversation with the print house about hey, I need it to kind of do this or that. Maybe use this type of paper, that type of paper. But you're not actually making the print these days unless you enlarge it and take it into your own darkroom.
Yeah. So, which I kind of miss that process a little bit, just the fun, just, being able to see, get that perfect picture. Because you can do 5, you can do 20 of them. And then when you finally get it, you're like, oh my God, that looks so amazing. But you still have to just wait for it to develop in the chemicals. And
yeah, there's a lot of waiting.
I bet your eyes get so tired in the red. You can't actually see shades anymore. You have to just I'd imagine you have to bring all the papers out to clear a day and just go over them, right? You wouldn't know in the dark room with that red light on whether or not you got the picture.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, you can see.
Really?
Yeah,
yeah, and you'd finish it up and put it in the bath, and yeah. Now it could warp a little bit after the fact if you didn't do certain things right. I mean, you'd be like, ooh, it's kind of tinging yellow a little bit or something, or it's kind of purplish. So there's a lot of variables to it. It's like why when people say that they do film simulations, I'm simulating this film stock. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? What film stock? Oh, I'm simulating Portrait 400. It's like, oh, are you simulating Portrait 400? What was the temperature at? How many agitations did you do? And then when you made the print, what they're trying to simulate something that has so many steps. And when you get into black and white, it's even crazier. It's like, did you use Rotinol? Did you use DDX Developer? How long did you leave it in the fixer for? What temperature did you do it at? Like I said, how many agitations? And so there's so many different variables. So when people sit there and go, I'm trying to emulate film, it's like, don't say that. Just say you're trying to give a film vibe and just leave it at that. Because even if I take a really well-known film stock like HP5, if I take HP5 and I put it in DDX and I take HP5 and I put it in Rotinol, the freaking grains are 3 times larger, and it doesn't even look like the same film stock anymore just because I put it in a different developer. But getting off subject, but it's okay. I'm okay getting off this subject because we're telling your story, which started in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, started in LA. It's been so long since I've worked with film, so it's but yeah, started in LA, and I just mainly took pictures of bands. It's mainly bands, no models or anything like that. Just mainly musicians, and I kind of lost track of that because I was in the music industry. So I found myself in the studios as a second engineer and a first engineer working for a producer. And then I got into the fitness industry.
So you know your way around an SSL console. That's what you're saying.
I worked with the SSL a little bit, and then I found myself working with a Trident console.
Ooh, Trident consoles are great. Malcolm Toft is the guy who made the Trident console.
Okay, you know all the history.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the Beatles tracked some of their later albums on a Trident because the other studio, they usually would use Neve.
Yeah.
Neves weren't available because I think something was going on at Abbey Road or whatever, so they had to go to a different studio. Another off. If you want me to go like off subject, like a mosquito to a light bulb, you either bring up film or you bring up audio, and I will take us off subject.
There you go.
So we're gonna get back on track there. So why did you leave Los Angeles and come to Austin?
Oh, that's a whole other ball of wax. So
Which you could ask half of the people who live in Austin because they all came from Los Angeles. I'm literally sitting next to two of them right now.
You came from LA too?
I came from South Orange County in 2011.
That's LA.
That's a long time ago. I mean, he's an Austinite at this point.
South Orange County is LA to people who don't live.
Right.
It's like halfway to San Diego. Basically,
if you've been inside of a Hollister store, you've been to South Orange County. That's what I usually tell people.
Okay, so it's very like surf. Yeah,
it's Laguna, it's Huntington, it's Newport Beach.
Love Laguna. I love Laguna. Yeah, beautiful.
So Austin. You came to Austin.
So I came to Austin in 2020 because when everything got locked down because of COVID, my wife, I was previously married. My wife and ex-wife and I decided that we needed to be somewhere that was opening up because we didn't have any work. So came out here. There was a lot of opportunity, and the community out here really kind of welcomed me, which is great. I started getting weddings right away. I started getting some jobs right away, but didn't. I still had to supplement my income somehow. So I did odd jobs here and there and tried to figure it out. Did a lot of video work out of state. And Austin has been very inviting. The people here are great.
Yeah.
I love this place. And like we were just talking about, some of the same people that we know, just from being in the photo community out here. It's an amazing place to be. I love it. That's why I stayed out here after my marriage. I was like, I love it out here. I'm going to stay. So I did.
Yeah, a lot of people stick around, and it's funny because I've lived in Texas for 33 years now, either in Austin or Dallas, kind of back and forth. But it is always cute to hear Austinites go. It's usually someone who moved here in like 2014 go, man, the city's just not the same anymore. It's like, you haven't even been here in like 9 years, man. But that's what happens when you live in a transient city is that, everybody who comes in is like, nobody's been here a long time. Like, I work with tons of models.
Right.
And I always, especially when I'm working with them for the first time, I'm like, where are you from? It's pretty much a first question you ask somebody, and like all of them are from somewhere else. It's very rare that I get a model who's from Austin.
Right.
I think like in the last 2 years, I've maybe had 2 or 3. So that's just the way it is here. But so it's interesting that you talk about, you started off with bands and that, because my awareness of photography predates the internet, like yours does. Like you didn't have the internet. You're like me. We saw the dinosaurs roam the earth, and there wasn't all this digital information in our fingertips. We had to stare at things and study them more. Yeah. We didn't have this like Instagram feed where things would come through. I would look at like an album cover, like Santana Abraxas or something like that. Not because there was a hot naked woman on it, but that actually was the reason. But I would sit there and I'd just stare at album covers for hours. Like my parents had vinyl, and so I'd like grab a 12-inch and just stand there and stare at it. And National Geographic and magazines, like that was how we consumed media, was through magazines. And so Brandon and I have had this conversation in one of our previous podcasts that, printing your work is a good thing. You can appreciate it more. But I also think that that's true of other people's work. And so do you think that, maybe the fact that you grew up in a world where there wasn't this overwhelming amount of information and you pretty much had to sit there and stare at the JCPenney catalog bra section or whatever it was you were looking at, whatever it was that you were going to be looking at.
That's how I learned photography, by the way.
Yeah, that's how I learned bourgeois.
Yeah. But JCPenney, I love you. Thank you.
Yeah, but did you think that helps you at all? And patience and things like that. What do you think that gave you as a photographer, not having all this media hit you at once and maybe have you stand back and really study things?
You know what? That's funny because I think I'm one of those people that I really like the ease of use now. And the funny thing is because I just released a video about the XH2. And then I got a comment from this guy who's 61 years old, and he's like, "Oh, damn it, you guys with all your digital stuff and instant gratification and blah blah." Back in, and he was on the border of like irate, and he's like, "Oh, I remember back in the day in the film, and I'm 61 years old," and I'm like, "Hey, brother, I'm 51 years old, and I totally agree with you, but I love being able to just plug in my SD card and have 1,000 photos that I just took and look at those 1,000 photos and start editing those 1,000 photos and not have to pay for this amount of money for each and every piece of paper and have to sit there for so long just to get that shot, because once I get that one shot that I really like, now I'm looking for that other shot I really like, and then the other one, and I'm able to just have the ability to be creative like that, and I love that. So I understood where he was coming from, but I think that instant gratification, I just, I guess I'm.
Well, I can counter that guy. I mean, I'm like you. I'm old enough to know this stuff.
Yeah.
I have to have experienced this stuff, and I can counter that guy by simply saying nothing is stopping you from shooting as slowly as you did back in the day with your very fast equipment. Like I shoot on a Fuji GFX. I actually do experience shooting slowly on digital.
Right.
Maybe that's the perfect camera for this guy. But I heard a quote somewhere on YouTube, and by the way, Jason did reference that he has a YouTube channel, and it's Jason Berkman Photography.
Yes.
Yeah. Jason Berkman Photography. So I'm going to plug his YouTube channel because you have 3 people in this room right now who have their own YouTube channels. So, but going back to it, I heard a guy on YouTube say, it was an older guy, and he basically just said that film doesn't move as fast as I do anymore. One of the reasons why I self-developed film is I needed to move faster.
Yeah.
I have been, even though I grew up on film, I also live in a world of digital now. And I'm like, okay, I don't want the local shop to take 3 weeks to turn around my film. So I'm going to teach myself how to do it. I'm too impatient. And so that's the only way. Like if I couldn't turn my film around that quickly, I probably wouldn't shoot it as much because I don't like to wait on other people. I like to just like, hey, I'm at point A and I want to get to point B and there's all these obstacles in my way and I need to remove as many of them as I possibly can.
You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
I don't get into those analog versus digital debates as to which one's better. I will only argue that they are different. And that is it.
Yeah, and I actually referenced to that gentleman who, and I appreciate him if he ever listens to this. But I also talked about audio because I went to audio engineering school where they said, we worked with 2-inch machines and we worked with SSLs and stuff like that. And they said, well, you know what, digital has come a long way, but it'll never be like 2-inch tape. And digital is, it's so easy, it's so quick, and it sounds so good. I don't think anyone uses 2-inch. Maybe just to track drums or maybe to just track bass.
Some bands that like just have a ton of money, like like Arcade Fire or Radiohead or somebody like that, they'll take their stuff and put it in 2-inch reel-to-reel because they can.
Yeah.
Most bands don't.
Yeah.
And does it sound better? It sounds warmer.
Yeah.
And there is a hiss in there, and it's not as bad as it used to be. Those Ampex reel-to-reels are good, but I'm recording us right now digitally. Mm-hmm. I would not be doing this podcast if it was on a reel-to-reel.
No.
Somehow I doubt that. Somehow I still think you'd make it work.
Back in the day,
it sound warmer.
Yeah, back in the day, you had to make it work.
Yeah.
You literally, like, if you wanted to edit, you would pull out a pair of scissors and cut the tape.
I've done that, and it's not fun.
No, it's not
fun. I don't like it.
No. Oh, you want to make it? You want to play this track backwards? Cut it.
Right. And then you have to tune the machine. So you have to tune the machine at certain tones, kind of like you tune a guitar. You have to
or a turntable, because turntables will drift off of pitch. It's the same thing. Like when you spin on an analog turntable, they will drift in and out of pitch.
So what do you guys get done after? Like, you've got 8 hours in the studio to get something done. What the hell do you get done? Like, what do you accomplish in 8 hours?
Drum tracks.
Back in
8 hours, maybe 1 or 2 songs in 8 hours.
Yeah, back in the 80s, the music industry had much larger budgets than they do now. I mean, like Michael Jackson would like buy a recording studio out for 2 years. Like this room, I will pay the rate for 2 years to have this studio. Nobody can use it, and just whenever I feel like it, I'll go in and I'll knock something out. That was the kinds of budgets that they were doing back then. Once the whole Napster and download thing happened, that all went to hell in a handbasket. And ever since then, like the only way bands make money now is when they do live shows. They don't really make a lot of money off the record sales. So very, very different than it used to be. But let's tune it to street photography, because that is kind of the vibe we're going for here. So we're going to take that to, do you prefer to use your viewfinder when you shoot, or shoot from the hip?
So if I could have my druthers, I would use my viewfinder, because I find myself, if I'm shooting from the hip and I'm trying to be incognito, sometimes I'll miss my focus. And so I love being in control of it. And if I have my eye in there, I have I have one hand, let's say my thumb is on the joystick, so I can control my focus point, because I like to do single shot most of the time. Then I would love to, if I had my druthers, I'd shoot from the viewfinder. But I do find myself going from the hip, or from the belly. Like I have an XE4 that I've been shooting street photography, so I just kind of flip it up and I look down, and it's so unassuming and so small that it's really easy to do street photography. But I'd like to go from the viewfinder more so.
Do you tend to stay more incognito, or do you ever just try to like Bruce Gilden a photo?
I just go straight in somebody's face.
Yeah, with a handheld flash right next to their cornea. Yeah.
Well, I've had people like literally go like, "Can you please erase that, please? Please erase that." I'm like, how did you even know I was taking a picture of you?
That's when you just go, okay, and then you go to the next picture and go, see, it's gone, and then scroll one more over, is like, see, there's nothing in between these two.
Right. Yeah, no, I've had people accost me before.
So what do you do to make yourself more incognito? What are some techniques that you can talk about? And I know you touched on this in our YouTube episode that we did. We did a collaborative episode together as well on street photography. But if someone is listening and they're wanting to get into street photography and they're like, well, I'm like afraid to like take pictures because what if people react or whatever? What are some ways that they can like cover that up and make it look like they're not taking pictures of other people?
Okay, so one thing that I do is I come from a family of actors. So I like to act. So if I'm looking down at my screen, I will point it towards somebody, and maybe I'll move my focus point more towards that person, but I'll look up, I'll check up like I'm looking a different direction. When I look down, I have my focal point on them. Maybe they're to the left or to the right in the composition. So, or I'll look straight forward, and as they walk in, I'll click it. Maybe they turn to look at me, and I'll look directly forward. So when I'm looking at whatever subject that I'm taking a photo of, I'll pretend like I'm looking a different direction.
Yeah.
Did that make any sense?
Yeah, I've done that once or twice with a Nikon F2 trying to get some shots in San Francisco. I definitely tried that technique because I don't like the whole like eye contact thing because I don't have a great poker face. So I just I blur my eyes and I'll just look straight ahead and just like maybe even squint. I'll be like, yeah, that car over there. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and then they feel kind of stupid because they're looking at you and they get angry for a second. They're like, oh, he's not taking a picture of me.
Yeah,
you gotta do that for the shot sometimes, you know.
It's funny. I was actually on the street, not yesterday, a day before. I'm shooting video on the XE4, and I just went out and just did some street photography. And I was on Pfluger Bridge, and I turned around. I wanted to get a picture. There was these three kids. There were these three kids, like just had kids. They were like in their 20s, whatever. And I went and I turned around and I took a picture really quick, and then I looked kind of like over their shoulders, and all three of them, when I looked back in the picture, were looking directly into my lens. It was funny. And I looked away, so they were like, is he taking a picture of me? But it's pretty funny.
You say you shoot like mostly on digital these days.
Yeah.
And you shot earlier, you mostly started film out with like band shots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You didn't have as much of a portfolio on film as you did on digital then.
No, I actually, most of what I had like in a portfolio was literally in like a what do you call it? It's like a portfolio bag.
Right.
I had like all my prints in there, which I still have. And actually in one of my videos, I did a video on acros, because all of that I did back in the day was black and white. I didn't touch color at all. I just felt like black and white was just where I felt just better doing black and white. I don't know why. I just loved black and white. But
yeah, I'm the same way.
So pretty much everything I had back in the day when it came to film was black and white.
I learned on black and white, and if I could create a world in which I shot nothing but black and white, I would be totally fine with that.
Yeah, I love it.
Continue on.
I know. I love black and white. I don't shoot as much with black and white now, but with the XH2, and I talked about this in one of my YouTube, or my newest YouTube my YouTube video about the custom settings on the PASM dial. I love it. I love just my C1 is like my portrait, C2 is high burst rate, and then C3 is my acros. So I just go to C3, and then that's my black and white.
That's your street photography setting.
Well,
that's my street photography setting. I shoot on Fuji, so if you're listening and you're wondering what we're talking about with C1 and Acros, the film simulations, I have two that are like my go-to. One, I'll do Acros, usually R. Red, I like the darker skies.
Yeah,
and then the other one I'll do is usually just classic chrome.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my two street photography go-tos. So if you're a Fuji user out there, that's what we shoot on if you see our street photography work.
I use classic. Actually, I've been using nostalgic negative as well.
I like nostalgic. Yeah, well, nostalgic negative's nice. I like using nostalgic negative on portraits when it's like 2 p.m. and like super sunny.
Right.
I find that it can bring skin tone definition back, but I find that it makes people look a little too
plasticky,
orangish.
Right.
But it will make people with blue eyes. It'll make their eyes like stand out like big time. Okay. So just some pro tips I've learned.
Yeah, no, I love the film simulation. That's one thing that made me fall in love with Fuji, really.
Yeah, and to the conversation we're having at the beginning of this episode. I don't have a problem with film simulations. That's actually what attracts me to Fuji. I was just ranting about people. Like, there's this Fuji group that I joined on Facebook, and it's just people who like make film simulation recipes, and they're just like, hey, is my recipe good enough? Like, I don't know. It's like they're looking for this acceptance or whatever, and most of them have never actually like shot on film before. Right. So it's like, well, you know how you'd really nail Portrait 400? Go to the store, buy a box of Portrait 400 and put it in a camera that takes Portrait 400, and then go shoot Portrait 400, and you'll nail the look of Portrait 400.
Right.
Just like that. But even then, what is the look of Portrait 400? Because how are you going to develop it, right? So that's why the whole film simulation thing is just like the obsession over getting a simulation right is stupid, but the colors that the film simulations can take you to with Fuji, that's what attracts me to that system for both the X mount and the GF mount. So.
Yeah, I'm not lucky enough to have a GF mount anything yet.
They're pretty rad. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask you is, so personally, when I travel and I'm taking photos, something that I've noticed as a photographer over the years in different places is the sky is different. The air is different. It's either thinner or hazier. Light travels through it differently. Like a morning in Texas during the winter the light is going to be more blue a lot more quickly. Whereas in LA, I think I remember being a lot warmer, especially in the morning. Whereas like LA sunsets, you've got bright pinks, bright oranges. Whereas Texas sunsets, it's usually just a flat orange.
Right.
So is there any sort of like, well, first of all, which light do you prefer most to shoot in, and which location as a street photographer? Like what's kind of like your favorite light that you've ever like encountered, if that's a fair question to ask?
No, it is. Well, it really depends on what I'm shooting with street, because I like to do like architectural stuff, And I do like doing acros with red because the dark skies, and I like the contrast between the clouds and the skies. But sometimes, overall, if I had my druthers, it would be overcast skies, overcast, dark. I just feel like there's just much more control over contrast and being able to. I just don't like direct sun. Sometimes if there are a lot of buildings, it could be interesting, but at midday, I'm not into it. I love overcast.
Overcast is good, man. A lot of times it's your softbox too, especially when you do portraiture, because you do portraiture, you know.
Yeah.
You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
I want to talk about a controversial topic with street photography, and this seems to be a controversial topic with street photographers because a lot of street photography crosses over to photojournalism, right?
Right.
You're telling the story of the city you're in. And so there seems to be a contingent of photographers who think it's disrespectful to take pictures of homeless people.
Yes.
I'm not sure I fully agree with the hardline approach on this because as a photographer, I do agree that you should treat all subjects with respect and dignity, right? Like, you know, if some homeless person's getting dressed or something like that, give them privacy, right? But I do think that if your streets are full of homeless people and you are going to tell the story of the streets, then why are you omitting that part of the story?
Yeah.
And you know, I think that there's a way that you can do it respectfully, but to ignore what's going on in your streets, are you actually telling the story of your streets?
I would have to agree with you. And also they're very interesting. And there's a story there, and there's a story to be told. You know what I mean? Like as far as like, you know, I'm not taking a picture of them because I want to feel sorry for them. I'm not taking a picture of them because I want to do them harm. But there is a story there. You know, these people are going through something, and there's depth and feeling and emotion, and I feel like that needs to be talked about. And if there's malice behind why I'm doing it, then that might show in the photo.
Yeah, if you're trying to like make fun of them or something, then yeah, you're a dick. But if you're trying to tell the story of your city, and it's like, hey, I want to tell the full story of my city.
So I once took a picture actually with film back in the day in San Francisco, and I really loved this photo because there was a juxtaposition between there was this homeless guy who was flat out, both arms out like this, both legs out, and there was a empty bottle right next to him. He was out cold, passed out, drunk, done. His feet were in the light, and his body was in the shadow. And at his feet was a businessman, just the from the neck down, businessman with a briefcase walking in the light. So this guy, there was that juxtaposition, there was that contrast between him being in the dark and his feet were in the light. You know what I mean? And there was this world beyond where he was at. And I thought that kind of told a story. And I didn't want to accentuate like, look how dirty or grimy or messed up this person was. It was that dichotomy in his life. You know what I mean? Like what's going on? He has his feet in the light. Like all he has to do is just get up, you know what I mean? And leave the bottle behind. And then there was this businessman who he was headless, you know what I mean? He just didn't pay attention to what's going on around him. And there's that whole thing as well, because people don't pay attention to what's going on. Oh, let's not address that problem, or let's not even look at it. Let's not take pictures of it. Let's just ignore the problem.
Yeah, and that's what I think it is. It's like, okay, fine. If you're telling me I can't tell the story, then are you like going and like clothing these people and getting them jobs or something?
Yeah.
Like at least I'm like raising awareness of the problem, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, yes, the homeless person was the subject, but you were telling an artistic story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why the reason why a lot of us are attracted to doing this in the first place is a lot of street photography is storytelling.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem there is, you know, anyone who has that kind of gripe is, I don't think they view photographers as the storytellers. I think they view photographers as people who are like, oh, like how can I take advantage of this situation for my own personal gain? And I think that's in part due to just the world we live in now with social media. That it is what it is. Let's call it what it is. But no, I still, you know, I think at the end of the day we are storytellers, and that, you know, that just has to be clarified.
Yeah.
I think it's like, what's that guy's name? Jake Paul, I think is the YouTube. Apparently there's some forest out in Japan where people hang themselves.
Oh yeah,
commit suicide there, and he decided to like exploit that to get more views or something.
That's
I think that's what people are like looking at. A lot of photographers are like, oh, you must be trying to do that, and it's like, no, man, I'm just trying to tell like a really honest story here. And,
right.
Yeah. So, now I think you mentioned you went to school. You have a little bit of formal training with photography. If you had are you all self-taught?
I'm self-taught. Yeah. So I took a long time off because I was just in music and the studios and stuff like that, and then I got into the fitness industry so that I could stay in the studios and stay playing music. And then about 10 years ago, I picked up an old Rebel camera, and I'm like, this is digital. It was kind of a crappy camera, but I did a lot of, I just took a ton of photos and got kind of more into it. And then I bought like an A6000 like 8 years ago, which is a very cool camera, actually. That was my first mirrorless. And then, I got a 5D about 7 years ago. And then I got Fuji just after that. I got an XT3, and that was it. I'm like, I have to be taking photos.
It was your calling, man.
I don't know. Late, I'm a late bloomer, late in life.
Better late than never, man.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about risk.
Okay.
Because shooting street photography does have some risk. What's the riskiest thing you've ever done doing street photography?
Oh gosh, we might have to edit some quiet time because I'm not actually sure. During COVID, I went to downtown LA. It's funny because it took me about 15 minutes to get there from where I was living in West Hills. And if you know LA, you cannot get from West Hills to Los Angeles in 15 minutes. That's how crazy COVID was. But I wouldn't say that was a risk. Maybe how fast I drove all the way out there. But just, I think anytime that you're walking streets maybe that you don't know, like in New York City or when I was in Philly or Philly could be risky. Philly's risky.
Yeah, I've been in those. Dallas and Houston, I've run into some of those situations. I didn't feel bad in Denver. Everybody was high. So Vegas, as long as you kind of stay in the touristy areas, it can get a little seedy if you go too far off the strip.
Yeah.
You might start having some people walk up to you and go, hey, do you need something? And it's like, no, I'm good.
Right.
But
oh yeah, in Vegas, man, I had some security guards like accost me outside with my client, like outside of a casino near what's that street?
Are you talking about Las Vegas Boulevard or
no
Flamingo?
Old
Fremont.
Yes,
oh
yes.
yeah. Oh gosh.
I was at Fremont, and they were like, "What are you doing taking pictures here?" I'm like, "I'm on the street." They're like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "I'm on the street."
So here's the deal with Fremont Street. I've done street photography on Fremont Street several times.
Yeah.
So the way it works there is the performers are usually the ones I encounter.
Yeah.
So like I'm taking pictures of the characters, but they're all getting dressed up as Ace Frehley from Kiss or,
Right.
Jubilee dancers or whatever with the pasties on their nipples. And
I hate that.
yeah, you just take the pasties
It's
off.
terrible.
No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so you'll be sitting there like trying to be a street photographer, and you're like, oh, this is an interesting thing I want to take a picture of, and they'll be like, you need to pay me, and it's like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm taking pictures of an environment that you're in.
Right.
Maybe you're my subject. It's none of your damn business. But yeah, they're always like, pay me, get out of here. You can't take my picture. And it's like, you literally like every night come out here to show yourself off to people. I can take your picture. I know the freaking law.
I had a guy do that to me actually in South Congress. A guy was playing guitar or some guy, and I took a picture, and he's like, you need to pay me or whatever. I'm like, I don't have any cash.
Was he shirtless?
I don't remember.
Because I see that guy all the time.
He's like,
I took a picture of him with my C330. I went behind him and just click. And then like as soon as he turned around, I was walking away. I was like, bye.
oh, he got upset with me, but this is the funny thing. He totally got one over on me because I'm like, I don't have any money or I don't have any cash on me. And he goes, I think he like showed me a sign or something like that. He's like, Venmo. I thought that the guy must have been, I don't know, I thought he was just like trying to get a little money. No, this guy was, he had this whole deal, but he was like, no, you got to pay me. I'm like, no, dude.
Yeah, the performer's got the Venmo and the Zelle, but I've actually run into homeless people who have it now. I'm not kidding. And I never carry cash on me. I haven't, like, ever since, like, I remember my dad used to, like, make fun of me when I was in college because I didn't, like, it's not that I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. I just didn't balance my checkbook because I am, as old as I am, like, when I got to college age, that's right when, like, online banking started becoming a thing. And I was like, I don't have to balance my checkbook. I can just go online and look at how much money I have.
Right.
Like the second I swipe my card, it shows up that I charged it. And so, but anyway, like these people have, there's homeless people now who have Venmo. I'm just like, don't you need a phone for that? What's your iPhone worth? $1,300? Like that's like a couple months. Well, maybe not in Austin, a couple months worth of rent, but that's a couple months worth of rent somewhere.
Oh, I have stories. I mean, for some homeless. I mean, I'm totally not. This is not a blanket statement about homeless people at all. But I've had situations where there was like the homeless guy that everyone knows in the neighborhood. I worked there, blah, blah, blah. We'd always give him money, blah, 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 blah. And one day you see him driving when you're there. Like I stayed at work late. This guy, I gave him money all the time. And then he drives past me in a gold Mercedes. I'm just like, mother, really?
Yeah.
Never saw him again, but it's like, hey, you give money out of the kindness of your heart and it's okay. I don't need anything back, but.
Yeah, it's homelessness in general. Like obviously, it's a thing we'd love to solve, and we know that there is a mental health aspect to a lot of it too. And a lot of them are veterans, So we don't really show our thanks there, unfortunately, as much as I think we should. Do you have a photograph that you've taken? Like, is there a tipping point in your development as a photographer where you took a picture and you had like this eureka moment? Like I can do this. Like, I think that and the photo probably sucks now because it was like so long ago and you weren't as good as you are now, obviously. But is there any sort of photo that sticks out in your mind, or maybe an experience you had as a photographer that lets you know, man, I really can do this. And I want to do this for a long time.
Well, there was one picture back in the day that I took of this band called Orgone. Check them out, Orgone. They're amazing, like a jam band, funk, soul. Really, really amazing players out of LA. They've been playing for a long time, buddies of mine. And I took a picture of them in front of, this is like back when the metro train in LA just like first started. There was a train that went from North Hollywood where they have their studio and everything to Hollywood. And so I took the band on that train. And so I did some pictures there, but there was one picture where they were just in front of the train. The train was going by. I did did a slow shutter speed and got the train just whizzing by while they're all, posing and stuff like that. And I said, wow, that was like a picture. I was like, okay, this is cool. This is creative. This is something. It's not just like, a wide angle shot of some, guy with his head big and his feet small with a cigarette looking crazy. It was like, this was something that I felt was really, I mean, I'm sure that people use that technique all the time. You know what I mean? But I just felt like it was something that at the moment I got creative with, and I loved it and they loved it. And so
it's probably something you saw that you replicated. You replicated something you saw a professional photographer do, and you're like, wow, I can do it too.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That was a good point with regards to film. Gosh, I don't know. Like these days, off the top of my head, I don't know.
I've seen some of your creative work. We can shift gears into some of your portraiture. I thought that the session we were talking about earlier, the one that you did for the designer, looked really cool. I mean, I think you're developing there a lot. You do some excellent portraiture.
I'd like to get as good in the studio as you are. I love the work that you do.
You should see his work.
Yeah. Yeah, I should see Rick. Well, how come I haven't seen his work?
Well, you'll see it.
I probably have.
You'll
probably
see it
follow
before.
him and like everything.
Wait, there's a good chance.
I'm actually bad with faces and names. Like I actually know people by their work.
Yeah.
Like especially photographers. I mean, models, it's pictures of them, so it's like, oh, I know what they look like, but like I don't know what a lot of like I would say that like half the photographers in this town that I've become friends with, like I didn't know what they looked like for the longest time. I just knew them by their work. I was like, oh, that's that Brandon guy's work. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
But you do portraiture as well.
I do, yeah.
And so what style of portraiture do you like to do the most?
It depends. If I'm doing models, I like environmental. I like golden hour environmental or on the street. But I also like doing studio work. I'm enjoying doing single. So I like one AD200 or one flash. Just one single flash, kind of getting that Rembrandt look or something like that. I love doing that, especially with male clients, getting that kind of dark and kind of rugged looking, kind of shadowy look.
Love it. Accentuating that jawline.
Accentuating the jawline. No, but I love doing studio work. I don't know. I like one speed light or one flash. I just love that look. And yeah, I'm trying to get better at that. But I do like environmental, like outdoor lifestyle type stuff. I really love that. It's kind of my thing.
So if you had to like pick a single lens to use for either like studio and lifestyle, what would you go for?
If it was one lens?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That's crazy because for
And give it to us in full frame because you're a Fuji user. Everyone's going to be like, he said a 23. I don't know anything about a 23 millimeter.
Yeah. 23, 35, that's a 35 millimeter equivalent. I love that focal length. But if it were to be for portraiture or for all around, if I had to choose one, it would be a 35 millimeter in APS-C or a 50 millimeter equivalent. If I use a 75 to 85 equivalent every day and a 35 equivalent, but if I had one, it would be the 50.
So it wouldn't be your 50 millimeter f1.0?
That's the like it's a 75 millimeter equivalent. Yeah. So for portraiture, that I love that for portraiture. But if I were to use it for portraiture, environmental, for all the different. If I were to use it for everything, it would be a 35 or a 50 millimeter full frame.
Right. And for those of you who are listening who might be beginners, who are like wondering what we're talking about with these different focal lengths being on different systems, go study crop factors. Mm-hmm. Okay, because like we think of 35 millimeter full frame as the standard, and then you go up and down from there because your crop sensors are a 1.5 or 1.6 depending on the system you're on. So that's why a 23 is a 35. Mm-hmm. Or a 56 is an 85 or whatever. Yeah. So just wanted to talk about, I wanted to bring that up because Brandon and I, we shoot medium format.
Yeah.
I shoot medium format digital, my crop factor is 0.79. Well, when I shoot on a 6x7, my crop factor is 0.5. And when I shoot on a 6x6, it's 0.55. So there's a lot of math you got to learn about focal lengths and perspective and all that. But it's part of the photographic journey, right?
I'm so terrible at math.
Of course, the better thing to do is to just slap the damn lens on there and go take the good picture and not worry about it.
See, that's what I'm talking about. You start saying 0.55, 0.56. I'm just like, oh, that's good to know. I should probably pay attention to that. But yeah, no, I just throw the lens on and I look through the viewfinder.
I try to memorize, like using the 35 millimeter standard. I try to memorize a 35, a 50, and an 85, and probably a 135 equivalent as a portrait photographer because I know those. It's like, oh, I need a normal field of view. I need something that's a 50 millimeter equivalent.
Yeah.
And then I'll go, oh, well, that is more like a 35 on a Fuji.
Right.
Or whatever. Or it's something that's more like a 63 on my Fuji medium format, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
So then if I were actually to have one lens, so I'm thinking, were you thinking about primes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if I had my druthers to have one lens for portraiture, and I didn't need low light, it would be the 50 to 140, which is a 70 to 200.
I've been looking at that lens.
Yeah, I have the 50 to 140. I'll lend it to you. It's badass. And actually for landscapes, it's amazing because of the compression. So when you're zooming into 200 or 140, the background is just, like coast. I have some pictures I'll show you of like the coast that I did just recently, and I took a picture of this little fisherman. He's like right on the rocks, and the rocks just look huge behind him. The compression, the way that it renders photos is amazing. I love it. I love the compression. So 50 to 140, because also for portraits, it's so sharp. So I'm at 70 to 200, 70 to 200. My Canon was 70 to 200.
Yeah, Nikons are 70 to 200 as well. So we're speaking Brandon's language now.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Are you a Nikon guy?
I'm a Nikon guy. Yeah.
Do you have a Z9?
I wish. No, I got a Z6.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad. My brother-in-law is also, I think he's a Z6 too.
Oh yeah. No, I shoot, funny enough, I shoot most of my work on the actual kit lens. So at f4. So like when it comes to gear acquisition syndrome, it pretty much stays in the film category.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you haven't gotten the bug with Nikon?
Nope.
Okay.
He has his complaints about the autofocusing on it.
Oh yeah. That's a whole other thing.
Well, the Fujifilm makes a kit lens that is, so I did a video on like which two lenses out of all the lenses that if I had my druthers to pick two lenses, one prime and one zoom. The one prime was the 35, which again is the 50 millimeter, and the other one was an 18 to 55, which is the kit lens. And because it's such a versatile and great lens, it's the most amazing kit lens you can get. But I didn't. And so Nikon makes a really good kit.
So their kit lens that they released with the Z series is it's actually it does really well. I was watching this YouTube video recently about it, and apparently they added a whole new proprietary coating over the lens. So at f4, that's its wide open. It's still pretty sharp, all the way across. Mm-hmm. And I often shoot at f4 in studio just because, I don't really actually mind being the background or the background being in focus. And I find that the Nikon, that lens actually, it handles itself pretty well. I don't really feel the need to upgrade, and I don't print as much of my work as I'd like to. A lot of it's just going to, like digital portfolios for different clients and that. But no, finding very, very little issues with it. And I also, a lot of my work is focused on, like I do a ton of retouching. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I got any sharper, I would run into issues with, the skin becoming brittle.
Right.
All right. So last question before we wrap it up. Yes. And that is, where do you want to take your photography next?
Oh boy, the answer is broad. Every opportunity and any opportunity I get to pick up my camera and whatever challenges me, I am a late bloomer, when it comes to like, I didn't 20 years ago, it wasn't like, I want to be a photographer and that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was like at 45, this is what I want to do for the rest, or 40, 42, whatever. This is what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to make money doing this. I want to pick up my camera as much as I can in my life. And so at this point, it's really whatever allows me to pick up my camera and be creative. I don't care. You know what I mean? As long as it fills my heart and I would love to just, I don't know what direction that I'm going with it right now. That's kind of why I do YouTube, is because I just want to learn as much as I can, and just talking, like just doing this, I'm learning more just from you guys, and every time I pick up my camera and go shoot, when I make mistakes, and it makes me a better photographer. And that's why I feel, because I'm a late bloomer, that I'm able to be a lot more humble about what I'm doing, because it might take me another 20, 30 years to be at that point where I feel like I'm a professional. You know what I mean? So
I also feel like when you get older, though, you have not an arrogance, but a confidence. I'm like, I know this now. Yeah. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. And you have less of that imposter syndrome thing going on. It's like, no, I have a finite amount of time on this earth. I know I've executed this thing. Now I need to move to the next objective. That's just how I've noticed I've gotten as I've gotten older.
Or I've come to terms with being an imposter. I'm like, it's okay. I just want to pick up my camera. I'm cool with being an imposter. I just want to just learn. I don't.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks for stopping in today. It's Berkman Photo on Instagram.
Yes.
Do you have anything else you want to plug besides your YouTube channel?
Oh, yes. One of the companies that I work for is called The Match Artist. It's actually online dating, believe it or not. I'm doing online dating photography. So The Match Artist, check them out. If you're looking to get better dates, you need a photographer, they'll send me out. So, yeah, check them out.
That's awesome, man. All right, that does it for today's episode. I thank each and every one of you for listening today. I want to thank Jason Berkman for coming into the studio here in Austin, Texas, talking to us about his photography. I thought it was an enlightening episode, and we love Jason, and we hope to have him back on our show sometime soon. All of you, take care. Chase light, not algorithms.
Thank you for listening to today's episode.
For more information about this podcast, go to www.f11pod.com.